what does it take for a human to kind of, you talk a little bit about the proverbial red pill. What does it take for a human to even open up to the idea that all that they know, or that they've been led to believe and programmed to know, might not be so? You know, what is that step that somebody needs to take to be even open to that?
Right, that's a great question. For me, I decided that as a scientist, to address that question, do we see reality as it is? I see the moon. I assume that that's because there really is a moon. I see an apple, and I assume that the shape and color and so forth that I see is at least roughly true. And you agree that you see a red apple, and so we agree that we're both seeing the same kind of reality. So to ask the question, is it possible that we don't see reality as it is, that maybe even space and time themselves are not the nature of reality? I realized that the way as a scientist to address that question is to ask, do our best scientific theories entail that we see reality as it is or not? So I asked the question, does evolution by natural selection entail that organisms would be shaped, that the sensory systems of organisms would be shaped to see reality as it is? And most of us might think yes. I mean, of course, seeing the truth makes you more fit. So those of our ancestors who saw reality more accurately would be more successful at the basic activities of life, like feeding, fighting, fleeing, and mating. And so they'd be more likely to pass on the genes that code for the accurate sensory systems. And that seems reasonable, but what I decided to do was to ask, using something called evolutionary game theory, which is the mathematical formulation of evolution by natural selection that we've had since the 1970s. John Maynard Smith came up with this mathematics. We can actually ask this as a technical question, as a theorem. Is it true or not that natural selection will shape sensory systems to see true structures of objective reality? And it turns out the theorem is very, very clear. The answer is no. The probability is zero that any sensory system of any organism sees any true structures at all of objective reality, according to natural selection. So for me as a scientist, I'm hard-nosed in the sense that I want to go with what our best science says. And so if our best science says, no, we see reality as it is, then I would have to, take that quite seriously. But our best science in this area, which is evolution by natural selection, is very clear. The probability is zero that we see reality as it is. So that's, for me as a scientist, how I began to take seriously the red pill, the idea that space and time and physical objects are not the right way to describe reality at all. So it's not that I'm getting the shapes a little bit off or the colors a little bit wrong or whatever. It's that the very language of space and time and objects inside space and time is the wrong language to describe objective reality. You could not give a true description of objective reality at all in that language. And that's a theorem of evolution by natural selection. So that's when I began to take the red pill seriously, is when I actually see it being entailed by our best scientific theories.
So this is where I want to make sure that we grab this, because one of the things that I agree with you on, but I hear you speak a lot about, is this theory of natural selection and the validity that, I mean, and one of the things I love about you is you'll hear that every now and then he'll say, I might be wrong, or I'm probably wrong. Right. But what he is saying right now, everybody, is based on the best that we have, right. So when somebody gives a definitive that can't be proven, we have to use a theory to look at that. So I want to go into natural selection a little bit more, because I think that sometimes just flashes by someone. So the concept of natural selection, only the strong survive, that if you look at our evolution, we're always trying to evolve and survive. I mean, what an amazing time to even just evaluate. And I want to get into a little bit of the pandemic. But the idea of seeing the whole truth versus seeing just a version of the truth, how does that facilitate our evolution. Like that's one of the things that I find so interesting is if this is true, and we're looking at this concept of natural selection, and our goal is to survive and evolve. Why would the truth, as you say, why evolution hid truth from our eyes? Why would the truth be hidden from our eyes, and how would that be advantageous for natural selection?
Right. And so I agree with your point that when I start with evolution by natural selection, I'm not saying that's because we know that theory is true and correct. We don't. It's just that it's the best theory we have so far. So as a scientist, I have to take our current scientific theories. I don't believe my own theories. I don't believe any scientific theories. Of course, we're going to be looking for deeper theories that surpass what we've already got and comprehend them as a special case. But right now, evolution by natural selection is the best theory we have in this area. And so that's why I use it. And so to your question about why would natural selection shape us not to see the truth, how would that be advantageous? There's a couple reasons why it would be advantageous. First, seeing the truth is pretty complicated and really not necessary. So a good example is if you're playing a virtual reality game, say of Grand Theft Auto, and you see a steering wheel in front of you, and you see a dashboard and some cars that you're competing against, and you're trying to win the game of Grand Theft Auto. Well, what you're really doing when you turn your steering wheel left or right and hit the gas, you're really in some supercomputer, you're toggling some voltages. So in this metaphor, there's a supercomputer that's the reality, and Grand Theft Auto is the virtual reality. And so what you're doing in that case is toggling millions of voltages per second in some supercomputer. But if you had to actually try to play the game by directly toggling all those voltages very, very quickly and in the right sequence, you would lose when you were competing with someone who just had to turn a steering wheel left or right. And so that's sort of what evolution did. It gave us this dumbed down virtual reality of space and time and objects that allows us to control this complicated reality without really knowing what we're doing. So I play Grand Theft Auto. I might be a wizard at Grand Theft Auto, but I don't need to know what I'm really doing in the supercomputer. And that's what evolution does for us. It gives us just simple eye candy that guides adaptive actions, and we're doing something in reality, but we're really ignorant about what we're doing, and that's perfectly fine. The symbols are there not to show us the truth. They're there to keep us alive. And that's really the whole point.
Yeah. And I think that makes total sense, because if you look at the goal in mind, our goal wasn't to figure out the whole truth, although so many people feel like that's their mission, to seek the truth. But then again, they're going about their days and just trying to move forward and win, or at least survive. But then you look at the bigger picture of mankind looking to evolve, get through these pandemics and everything like that. It makes sense that we're going to refine what it is that we see so that it facilitates that. Because if you go down a rabbit hole, I mean, it could be exhausting. You might not like what you find, and it might have nothing to do with moving forward.